Listen.
But the Biden administration's not responsible for this trial.
How can you say the Biden administration's not responsible for this trial?
It's a state trial. It's Alvin Bragg. Whether you think there's a political motive for him, it's not connected to the DOJ. I mean,
Shannon,
the feds passed on these election charges.
Shannon, you should look at how many logs they have of state officials, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, visiting the White House, and then tell me that this is not a Biden trial. I don't care.
The feds pass on this case is the point I'm
You're
making.
Right. The feds passed on this case. Also, DA Cy Vance passed on this case. And
years
frankly,
ago, and then it came back.
And Bragg passed on this case. You know when it came back? When he decided to run for office. So tell me how that's not an indication that Joe Biden, who just sent his campaign down here with Robert De Niro yesterday, isn't a part of this.
It's a Biden witch hunt. It's weaponization. There are a lot of witnesses, a lot of people that they could have called that they didn't call. Now, they didn't call them, obviously, because they would have been very bad witnesses for them. We already have the win. If we had a fair judge, this case would have been over a long time ago.
All right, folks. Well, we just had a wild roller coaster of a day at Trump's very bogus, highly political trial in New York, where the day started not looking very good because this crooked and conflicted Judge Merchan was trying to essentially rig the jury in favor of convicting Donald Trump. But then later in the day, things totally did a 180 where it now seems to indicate that the jury is either hung or in some ways rejecting that bogus attempt. And we'll give you all the details here today. Okay, it's just a wild up and down. You see the bias of the judge, but you also might see some potential hope here where it doesn't seem like the jury is close to unanimous to convict Donald Trump. But we did end the day here apparently where NBC News is reporting that Trump's defense team is newly animated and have cracked a smile on their face while the district attorney's team looks tense and apprehensive in New York. And this moment came as the jury submitted a second note to Judge Merchan asking him to give instructions again. Why is this? What is all going on? We will give you that story here today, and we'll start from the top. So let's just get right into it. Why did I say that the day did not start well and it was looking like the judge was going to rig the conviction for Donald Trump? Well, you know, in a normal criminal case, you would think the jury has to be unanimous on two things. Firstly, the jury has to unanimously agree what the crime is, right? That's pretty standard practice. You can't have one juror trying to convict you of a different crime than all the other jurors. And then secondly, the jury has to decide unanimously that you are guilty of that crime that has been selected. Well, if you know anything, if you've been following the nonsense at this bogus trial in New York, you would know that Alvin Bragg and his people have had a very hard time actually proving what crime Donald Trump committed, right? They really have no idea what the crime is. So Judge Merchan just told the jurors that they do not have to unanimously agree on what crime that Trump is guilty of, which essentially means that so long as the jury are all corrupt and biased, they don't have to agree on what crime it is. Okay, so 4 of the jurors could say he's guilty of this crime, and then the other 4 could say he's guilty of a different crime, whatever. Does not have to be a unanimous jury. Highly corrupt, completely unprecedented, completely ridiculous. Take a listen to some of that reporting here from Andy McCarthy in terms of what happened here.
Well, let me ask you about the 3 choices. And one thing in particular that this judge said that these jurors could do. He just delivered what is being called really the pinnacle of all of this. He said that there is no need to agree on what has occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the 3 choices. Thus, this means that they could split 4-4-4, and the judge would still treat them unanimously. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it's really outrageous because in a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery case, it's, you know, you have to rob it's got to be a financial institution. You have to show intent. Those are the things the jury has to agree on unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less, but it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019. So the only reason they're still able to bring this case is because it's a felony, allegedly, and yet now the judge is saying, you don't have to agree on what the felony is.
So you heard that there. The jury does not have to agree on what the crime is? I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? How much more transparent can it get? But why is Judge Merchan saying this? Well, it is because, obviously, he is a very highly crooked person, okay? Some of his family's even busy raising money for the Democrats while they're doing this. But, of course, we hear all this nonsense from nerd characters like Ed Krasenstein that, oh, no, this judge is totally not impartial and you should trust the justice system. Oh, really? So why are they doing that? Because if this was such a clear-cut case against Trump, why would the judge literally say to the jury, you don't have to agree on what the crime even is? Why is that? Because the prosecution was a complete mess. They never proved the crime. And so the judge is just trying to pull some strings here, hoping, hey, maybe we can make it a little easier to get a conviction because you don't even need a truly unanimous jury. And here was Donald Trump's reaction to that, again, at the beginning earlier today when things weren't looking good before they started to turn around. Take a listen.
Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections. And you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job. And it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace. And I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we do.
So again, that was earlier today, and you certainly heard a different tone there in Trump's voice for understandable reasons. Not because, again, he's guilty, but because the judge is literally just saying to the jury, you guys don't have to be unanimous. If you have a 4-4-4 split, we will be able to convict there. And by the way, if you ever needed any more proof than there already is that this entire trial is a sham and this judge himself is very corrupt, someone else pointed this out today, and I thought it was a good point. They said, it is not a coincidence that the same corrupt judge, Juan Merchan, was randomly, quote unquote, selected for the Alan Weisselberg case, the Steve Bannon case, and Donald Trump's case. Okay, right? Because that's how it usually works. The judge is supposed to be random. You're supposed to get different ones. Why does this one judge keep ending up in all of the cases related to Donald Trump in New York? Is it the only judge in New York or something? We know why, because it's not truly random, is it, folks? Take a listen to that.
Then you have Judge Merchan, who should have recused himself. Judge Merchan, who I want the American people to remember very astutely, has somehow randomly selected, had Steve Bannon's case, had Alan Weisselberg's case, and now put Alan Weisselberg back in jail. Okay, this is what we're dealing with. Somehow he randomly also gets Donald Trump. That's not the way the system works. You assign a case randomly. That's the way it's supposed to work. But in the new America, under the Biden regime, we are sitting here in a politicization of all our judicial systems. He is intentionally obstructing the defense's case. There is no point in us even putting on a defense when you have a judge who is sitting there telling the jury, don't listen to them. I'm going to scream. I'm going to even tell the press that they can't sit in there. And God knows the press is tough on me, but I had their back in this one. They had no business kicking them out. And that judge is so crooked that he couldn't stand that there was bad evidence being brought in by this attorney who happened to work for the SDNY, let's not forget, who has a great, stellar reputation, as you mentioned. But the judge lost his cool. He lost his cool cool on Monday, and he lost his cool again today. So it's time to wrap this case up, throw it out. If this judge wants any credibility back, that's what he should do. There should have been a directed verdict. There should have been a mistrial.
Not to sell anyone a false bill of goods here, folks. I said since the beginning of this case that the argument against Trump is weak. There is no crime committed there, but it's going to come down to, firstly, the corruptness of the judge, which we know is not in our favor there, the corruptedness of the jury selection and who is on the jury, which seem to be a little corrupt, but we'll ultimately have to find out there. That's what it's really going to come down to, okay? So with that said, the good news we may have gotten today, and again, I'm not here to say, oh my gosh, this means he's not going to be convicted or whatever's going to happen, but it does seem to lean in our favor. And according to NBC, Trump's team and even the prosecutors seem to think the same thing. Just 3 hours now into these deliberations, the jury came back to Judge Merchan, or I guess Merchan, my bad, with multiple questions. Okay, so they're basically asking for notes on certain testimony that they were not given because the judge gave them, bad directions and all of that. And this could be a sign that we have a hung jury. Why is that? Because, well, now they want more evidence. They're asking for more things. There's conflict going on there in the jury, evidently, because if this were just a unanimous, hey, they picked 11 easy liberals and we get an easy conviction, very likely they would just go along with the judge. They wouldn't be asking all these questions. So take a listen to what happened later during the jury deliberation here and why that may spell good news here for Donald Trump.
The buzzer, then the note. What can you tell us, Paula?
All right. So they received a note from the jury, and it contains 4 different requests. We're getting these live updates. They're coming in real time from our colleagues. One of the requests is, the jury requests David Pecker's testimony regarding the phone conversation with Donald Trump while Pecker was there might be a little typo here, was in a meeting. So this is something that we signaled they might ask for, is specific portions of testimony from key witnesses, because they do have a laptop that contains a lot of the documents at the heart of this case, but they don't have transcripts from witness testimony.
And by the way, why don't they have transcripts from witness testimony? Because the judge is trying to withhold it or get the jury to not remember it or something like that. So that's why I say part of this is kind of the jury pushing back on the judge.
And obviously this case in many ways is heavily reliant on the testimony of witnesses. So we fully expected that they would come back and ask for additional portions of testimony. Here they're asking for a specific portion of testimony from David Pecker. Now, another one of the requests was Pecker's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting. Now, there is another request for Cohen's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting. So those are 3 of the 4 requests. We're getting these live updates. This is interesting, though, that 2 of these requests relate to the Trump Tower meeting. This is the 2015 Trump Tower meeting that prosecutors argue began this alleged conspiracy to try to suppress negative stories to help Trump win in 2016. We're learning the additional request that has come in is, again, Pecker testimony about a decision not to finalize and fund the assignment of McDougal, of one of the aspects of the deal with McDougal. Again, this is coming in real time.
And just to end off here where we began, clearly both defense and prosecutor teams seem to think so, because NBC was now reporting after they kept sending these notes back to the judge, indicating that Trump's defense team is newly animated and have cracked a smile while the district attorney's team looks tense and apprehensive in New York. This moment came after the jury submitted a second note, so apparently there's more, asking him to give the instructions again. So the judge here was hoping maybe with the vague and confusing instructions that'll help tip this, because we know that this shouldn't be a conviction under normal circumstances, so let's mess here with the circumstances. The jury said, no, we're confused. Please help us out here. The district attorney's team looks tense and apprehensive. Todd Blanche on Trump's defense team just cracked a tight smile. Trump, Blanche, and Emma Bove, another one of Trump's attorneys, are whispering amongst themselves and look newly animated, according to NBC reporting, and that is certainly in strong contrast to the earlier Trump clip we showed you where he was saying that, yeah, Mother Teresa couldn't beat these freaking charges. Jurors were then dismissed for the day after a few more hours of deliberations. Deliberations will continue tomorrow at 9:30. So we didn't get a decision today. We don't know when we're going to get one. Could be tomorrow. Could be a long time from now. Who the heck actually knows? What I do know is this. Either way, in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, this is not going to stop Donald Trump. Because if he's found not guilty or there's a hung jury, whatever, then there you go. Okay. That makes some Democrats look bad. But at the same time, because this criminal case has been so bogus, because even liberal outlets have been calling it bogus, i.e. CNN, we've done a few different videos on that. I don't think it'll look good for Democrats if they get a conviction either. I mean, very likely either I would say it has little impact on the election because a lot of people genuinely at this point now think it's politically motivated. It was not a strong case. But then also B, there's the other scenario where it openly backfires against the Democrats, where getting them a conviction, the optics of trying to throw him in jail or whatever they end up doing there, and I think that's an open question, will not go well for them either. Okay, he will become a martyr, not just among the Republican voters that he's already a martyr with, but that may even go so far as to making him a martyr with independents. And I know people will say, well, under normal circumstances, a political candidate getting convicted of a crime should not make him popular with independent voters or boost his poll numbers or whatever, to which I say maybe that's true. But this is Donald Trump we're talking about, okay? He defies all the normal laws of politics when it comes to elections and what raises your poll numbers and sinks your poll numbers. And so, truly, I think either way, what happens, I think if we do get a conviction, that will be a very bad thing for the country. But at the same time, will it really stop us in the election? I genuinely think at this point, the answer is likely no.
Think Trump did something illegal in the New York hush money case. I've been interested in whether or not these numbers would change at all during the course of this trial. Simply put, John, they have not. Pre-opening statements think Trump did something illegal, 46%. After the direct examination of Michael Cohen by the prosecution, look at where we are now, 46%. The percentage of Americans who think that the charges are very serious, in fact, dropped from 40% to a little bit more than 35% during the course of this trial. So, yes, perhaps things might have changed with those 12 jurors, but when it comes to the larger American public, there has been no change, at least so far, John.
Any possible reasons why?
Yeah, I think the question is, what's exactly cooking here? Why hasn't there been much of a change? Well, folks like you and me, real news junkies, might be paying really close attention to what's going on. The fact is, most Americans don't really care that much. So closely following news about economy inflation, that's number one at 65%. Look at immigration, 52%. Election legitimacy, 49%. Abortion, 47%. All the way down on this list of issues tested by the Ipsos Knowledge Panel is Trump's court cases at 42%.
And if you said that maybe 5 months ago and maybe the case went a little differently, the case was a little stronger, you may be able to frame that whole thing differently. But I think because of the specific circumstances here, I think either way, we'll be fine in terms of the election. Will we be fine as a country? Will this be a good precedent? Absolutely not. So we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, it's not in our control. Say your prayers, but ultimately it's we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, with that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. How do you think this is going to end? Do you think we'll see a conviction? Do you think a hung jury? What do you make of all these notes they keep sending back to the jury? And why do you think the Trump team seems happy about that? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, Alpha Moves Only. God bless. Have a very great rest of your day and peace.